Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What is up? Dave, Duncan and Kyle here from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review. Yes, they have returned. For this review, Duncan, Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from Portuguese hardcore band Devil in Me. The band's new album On The Grind will be released on January 14th on Dead Serious Recordings. So these guys have been active since around 2004, and On The Grid will be the band's fifth album. What the fuck? Over the years, they have played with bands such as Biohazard, Stray From The Path, Sick of It All, These Nuts, The Ghost Inside, and Raise Fist. The band are also set to go on a European tour with Comeback Kid in January 2022. Fingers crossed, that still goes ahead. The album was recorded at Eyeball Studios, produced by the band, and mixed and mastered by Carlos Rocha. The album also features a guest appearance by Scott Vogel of Terror. So, gentlemen, totally new to these guys. Can't believe they've had 5 albums out. Never heard of them. So, yeah, I hadn't heard any of their previous stuff, so I didn't really have anything really to compare this to, I suppose. Had a little listen to their last album, Soul Rebel, which came out in 2015, so there's been a bit of a gap between that last album and this one. But I was quite surprised how much I liked the 2015 album. These guys are a hardcore band, but very much like influenced by the 90s. Again, another review talking about the 90s. The 90s kind of New York kind of hardcore scene, I suppose. Bands like Propane and Cro-Mags and Madball. There's a bit of a Sworn Enemy in there as well. And you know me, I'm partial to a little bit of hardcore. 90s stuff, possibly, yes. I am usually in my happy place with stuff like this. But I'm always like keen to hear like what kind of spin like a band like this are going to put on their sound. Like what else these guys do lean into that like 90s style musically. The production doesn't necessarily go down that avenue, I didn't think. Like I think they have like kind of like beefed it up with a slightly more modern sound, which I think it works pretty well here. I think some of like the older hardcore albums sounded great. Like back in the 90s when you heard them, it was like, yeah, this is fucking awesome. When you hear them now, you're like, okay, production maybe needs a little bit of work. Some of them stand up still pretty well, but like if you look at like bands like Propane, they re-released all their old albums with like new mixes, new masters. Like so, like bands are obviously trying to bring their stuff up to date a bit. This didn't have that problem for me at all. Like the riffs sound really thick. The drums have got plenty of punch to them. The bass is giving you that plenty of bottom end with a bit of girth, and then the vocals are obviously right out in front, as hardcore is, plenty of venom. I thought the balance of the mix was spot on. Even they had these kind of like Cro-Mags-esque kind of solos in the music, they cut through pretty well without any issues. And I think the balance is there in the music as well. I think when I was listening to something, they don't just like step on the gas and like go for it for it's like 24 minutes or something like that. There's plenty of change-ups in the tempo and the rhythm throughout the album. Actually, I liked how it kicked off. The first track's called Will, and it's like fully charged, loaded with lots of like typical kind of like those kind of galloping hardcore rhythms, but it then kind of drops a gear on the second track, Awake, which is like far more like mid-paced, a bit more kind of groove heavy. And I think the album kind of continues in that same kind of fashion, keeping each track a little different from the last. Sometimes it's fairly subtle, but I think there's enough there, just musically to keep you interested enough. Like vocally, it's exactly what you'd want from a band paying homage to the 90s hardcore. The vocals are very audible, you can make out exactly what he's saying, and that's very representative of like 90s hardcore. But his tone's quite cool. He's got a nice mix of like a kind of quite harsh, but it's mixed with a little bit of melody and it's slightly kind of tonal at times. And you can hear that on tracks like Awake. It reminded me a little bit of like Throwdown on that track. Actually, I think they could have got away with a little bit more of that, if I'm honest. I like that little touch on that track. I would probably have pushed that a bit further. But it was quite cool to know they've got that in their back pocket if they want it. There's also, the usual like compulsory gang vocals, which no hardcore album is complete without. Yeah, I think it was fairly enjoyable. It's like 24 minutes in length, so it's like a short, kind of sharp kick in the gut. Easy to stick on, fire it on repeat a couple of times, and just kind of get your mosh on, if that makes sense. Is it pushing the envelope or trying to be unique in the genre? Not really. I've heard this type of stuff, being done many a time, but I think it's done fairly well here. I think if you dig that like New York hardcore style, then you'll most likely enjoy this one. It kind of does what it says in the tin, like kind of no more, no less. It's kind of, I don't know, it's like a margarita pizza, I suppose. You kind of know what you're getting. Has those, the classic ingredients, that are used together for a reason, because it works, There's
pizza for dinner or something.
There's no pineapple here. There's no pineapple on this pizza, guys. It's classic margarita style.
Well, if there's pineapple in it, it'd be Hawaiian, Dave. So
yeah, no, no Hawaiian for me. No,
don't know what you're missing.
Yeah, I thought this was a decent album. I think comparing it to some of the kind of hardcore stuff we heard in 2021, maybe not quite up there. Like levels of like Worst Out or Foreign Pain or anything like that. But I enjoyed it. It's something that I could stick on and listen to. Like, not have to overthink it. I thought it was a pretty decent album. Duncan, what do you think?
I think I like this one more than you.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
All over the place. I think there's loads to like here. I think you, once again, kind of circling back to some of the stuff you've already mentioned, because you're very good at getting out there first, Dave, and just making sure all those points are in there. I think the production is fucking killer on this. I think it totally fits the sound. In fact, I was actually surprised at how modern and retro every single song sounds effortlessly. They really have kind of managed to get that right down. I mean, the guitars sound of the era, but are clearly, meatier than you would have heard back then. So I think the mix is great. Everything's audible. Once again, kind of leaning on the Kyle thing. Not evident of much in the way of any fuckery at all, except just good recording and good mixing. Vocally, I think this is fucking awesome. I love this guy's voice. It's got that right amount of angst. It doesn't sound like he's stretching too much for it either, but it's also tonal. So he manages to deliver like tonal, aggressive vocals, which I love. I mean, that's like some of the music of that era that I found the most interesting was when the vocalist just wasn't shouting, but he could clearly sing as well, and this guy can do that. Lyrically, I found it really interesting. The only thing that I would hold as like maybe a negative is it is a short album, and they have essentially 3 instrumental tracks. The 3 instrumental filler tracks equate to about 2 minutes. Yeah. So it's really only a 22-minute album.
That's again very 90s hardcore. There's a lot of that going on.
And I don't necessarily think it adds anything to what they're doing, unless it's to give you a bit of respite potentially from the pacing. But like,
I think it's a bit of a throwback, to be honest. I think they're kind of throwing back to that 90s sound because it was something that was done a lot back then.
Yeah, I mean, and once again, I understand there's paying homage to something, and then there's trying to sound like something, and I think that there's a difference there. And to me, it's just not something they need. I could get it maybe at a midway point and maybe towards the end, but I thought 3 was maybe a little excessive. Out with that though, this is a very, very, very easy listen. I mean, you don't have to think about too much of anything. It's a great pick-me-up album. It's super fucking short, so you can spin this one with ease and spin it again. Its biggest crime, and I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head, Dave, is that it isn't necessarily doing anything that you haven't already heard bands do before. But on the flip side of that, what they're doing is delivering. If you're moaning just now that you don't have a new Propane album in your hands or a new Cro-Mags, and you're having to wait for that time for those bands to release it, Devil in Me is a great stopgap for that. It's not as interesting as some of the French stuff or the Belgian stuff that we listened to last year, which was kind of this kind of throw. There seems to be a movement in Europe just now of kind of New York 90s hardcore inspired bands that are all doing really exciting stuff. And whilst I wouldn't say they're on the cutting edge of it, there's something kind of comforting about listening to Devil in Me. I think it fits a mold and a sound that will easily get you through until one of your favourite bands, the aforementioned bands that they tour with, put out their next album. Yeah, I thought it was good.
Nice. Kyle?
That fucking bass tone on this album is absolutely goddamn incredible. I love this thing. It just sits perfectly in the mix, and you can hear everything that's going on. It's got the perfect amount of low end, perfect amount of fuzz on top, sits right in between the guitars, and there's a bit of a 90s guitar tone in, I think, like track 1 or 2. Like, it just goes solo on the left side for a bit, and you can hear a bit of that, like, scraping awful fuzz from, like, a Metal Zone or something back in the 90s from Metal. It's great. I really like it. I think what I'm pretty much going to touch on what you guys said already. It's really good, like, hardcore inspired, not ripping off, but, you know, they definitely have an influence, but they do it so well, and it is quite interesting to listen to. It's very well paced, and it goes up and down. There's quite a lot of variation and stuff. I quite like the filler tracks, actually, but then I'm kind of a sucker for that, so but no, best things about this is definitely the production. It's fantastic. It's really well done. I think there's a tiny bit of fuckery on the drums, but it's so tastily done that I didn't really pick up on it until like 4 songs in. It's like, oh, okay, you did that. Well, fair enough. It's like to try and like reinforce things and make them sound modern and updated, because I mean, this kind of sound really does benefit from a bit more of a modern feel. Like you were saying before, if you listen to stuff from back in the 90s, like, yeah, you could try again. But no, this is really sounds really good. It's really fun to listen to, and you can tell that they had a blast writing it, and, you know, a good time doing it, especially with all the gang vocals coming in on every song. But it's part of the genre. I'm not going to deny it. Gang vocals are fun, so yeah, no, I had a great time. I put it on quite a few times, and I didn't really pick out any favorite songs or anything. I think they're all like as good as each other. There's not really anything, like any riff or anything I would say stands out too much from each other. But I mean, you can just put it on. It's such a short album. You can put it on, have it on in the background while you work, and have a good time with it. So, no, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay. So what are we thinking ratings for this new one from Devil and Me? It's an enjoyable album. It's not, you know, as I said, it's not anything I haven't heard before, but I still enjoyed it. I liked that, like the little kind of odd melodic vocal line in here and there. I think a little more of that would probably make this even more kind of memorable. But it's a hardcore record at the end of the day, and it's another, you know, hardcore band to add to my list that I'll keep an eye on going forward. I enjoyed it. I even enjoyed the little kind of interlude tracks it did to just kind of took me back to those like kind of 90s albums. They did a lot of that. I'd probably go 3.5 on this one. Duncan?
I was right, just a little bit above you, 4.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And Kyle?
I'll go through it up 3.5, yeah.
3.5, cool. Next one. This one drops on January 14th on Dead Serious Recordings. The album's called On the Grind. You can check them out. I'll put some links in below to their Facebook, and if I can find any pre-orders, I'll stick that in there as well. Check them out. Let us know what you think. If you've heard any of the songs, once you've heard the album, drop some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That's the review. Thanks for checking out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.